Hey y'all, welcome back to Between a Hot Mess and a Therapist, your not so typical self-help podcast for high responsibility helpers who are tired of pretending they are fine. I'm your host, Shawna Lovin, a seasoned therapist, Texas LPC supervisor, 3-5 emotional projector, and a total tree-hugging auntie rebel who believes healing can be natural. Of course, with compassion and a little cussing. If you're watching on YouTube, listening in your car, hiding in the bathroom at work, or staring at your ceiling at 2 a.m., baby, I already know what kind of week you're having. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfy, and let's dive in. I love being a therapist. Let me just start right there, because most people get real weird the second a clinician says out loud that they don't want their entire life swallowed by client hours. I love the work. I love what happens when someone feels seen in such a real way. I love helping people make sense of themselves. I love the depth that comes when you are supporting someone. But at a certain point, the math is not mathing. More clinical hours look good on paper for sure. But in my actual body, in my actual week, and my actual life, oh, that's a whole nother story. It's like moving me further away from the kind of life that I was actually trying to build. And I think that's the part that I think more helpers need permission to say without whispering or saying it too quiet. You think just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you have to answer to keep going until your body just taps out. Just because you can hold a lot of space for other people doesn't mean that your whole future should be funded by how much emotional labor you can squeeze out before dinner. The moment that I realized that I wasn't building the life that I wanted, it just hit me. It was not like it was some grand dramatic breakdown and I'm in tears and falling over and just couldn't find myself to get up. It was not just one terrible day. It just wasn't that way. It was like this slow building accumulation of truth and understanding of who I am and where I am. Part of the realization also came with that my husband is getting ready to retire in just a few short years. And I started to realize that 30 hours of therapy or work or whatever I'm doing is not the same as 30 hours of paperwork, emails, and logistics. It's completely different energetic load. And we're not talking about the mental load that females typically have with all the things going on in life. This is something a little bit different. You're tracking people's stories. You're holding pain. You're reading the nuance of the room. You're regulating yourself in all this while you're trying to stay present. You're making decisions. You're noticing what isn't being said. And you're doing it again, and again with all the people that you support and that you help. That's the kind of work that asks something real of you as a person. And when I look at my week in an honest way, I could see that if I kept solving every money question with, well, I'll just take on one more client or I'll just do one more day of overtime, I was going to end up with a full schedule and an empty self. That was my mayhem. That was the part that I had to map out without sugarcoating it. And I just had to see it for what it is. The schedule was technically functional, right? But I was eating all the good parts. The energy that I needed for creativity, for family, for actual future building, for being a whole human, being outside of the role that I'm in, that's what was getting kind of scrapped into like little pieces and leftover. And I didn't like that. I was giving the best of me to the work and then asking the rest of my life to survive on what was left in the fumes. And I know that I'm not the only helper who has done this. The math and quietly hating your answer. Hey, leave it in the comments. This is an old pattern that kind of sneaks in. Because if I need more stability, you automatically think you need more clients. Or if you want more income, you need to work more hours, more overtime. If I want to feel safer, I become more available. That is such a trained response in our helping professions. It's crazy. We're taught to solve pressure with more of ourselves, more presence, more capacity, more service, more accommodation, more output. But after a while, that pattern stops feeling noble and starts feeling really expensive. And for me, that's when I think the shift really happened. I stopped asking, how do I squeeze more out of my life, to set things up? And I started asking, what would it look like if I build something that supports my future without draining the capacity that I have or the capacity that I'm trying to protect? That question, I think, changed everything. Because the t-shirt business is not random. It's not me playing around. It's not just some cute little side hustle to make burnout look quirky and like entrepreneurial. No, it's a deliberate pivot towards a different kind of support. It's tactical. It's creative. It's physical. It's something that I can build that doesn't require me to spend every extra ounce of emotional energy performing more care just to create more income. It gives me a different relationship to effort, a different rhythm, a different way of investing into my future self. And that really matters. I had to get real honest about my capacity, not my potential, not what I can force myself to do in a pinch, my actual sustainable capacity. And the truth is, I do not have 40 hours a week of emotional bandwidth to hand it over and still feel like myself. Because if you do, please tell me, how do you do it? It's not me being crazy in all this either. It's not being ungrateful for the work that I do or have done. It's not me knowing the difference between what I can do and what I can keep doing without becoming somebody else that I don't want to be. I think that's the part where a lot of people kind of just skip over. We validate everyone else's limits and then treat our own like some freaking character flaw. We call it professionalism when we really are asking our bodies to normalize depletion. We act like the gold standard is just this endless availability and deeply skilled financial security and present at home and creatively alive and spiritually connected and somehow never need a different structure to support all of that shit. Let me say, that set up exactly how people end up super duper crispy, resentful, and wondering why the work that they once loved now feels like a slow drain. So no, the t-shirt business is not a separate from my life, from my clinical life, that is. It actually protects it. That's what I want people to understand. Choosing to not max out my clinical hours is not me taking on work less seriously. It's making me take on my longevity a lot more seriously. It's like having me respect the fact that I want to keep doing therapy and helping others, and I cannot build my whole financial future on extracting every usable drop of care for myself though. So the t-shirts, the press, the design, the making, the building with my family, actually, that is not a distraction from my original mission. It's part of the architect that lets me keep showing up in the mission as a whole person. And there's something about the rhythm of that kind of happens in your body that your body actually deeply understands. Therapy asks one kind of presence for me. The t-shirts work as another thing. They ask, one is emotionally attuned, relational, and mentally layered. On the other hand, creativity, repetition in like a grounding kind of way, visual satisfaction, and it's concrete. I can feel the difference in my system. I can feel the relief of doing work that engages me without requiring the same kind of emotional expenditure. It's a new kind of rhythm, honestly. It feels more like a harmony than actual hustle. And that's the part I think people need to know. It's to give yourself permission to explore. Not everything that nourishes your future has to make perfect sense to the people watching. Not everything that supports your nervous system has to look prestigious. Sometimes the thing that helps you stay in your calling longer is the very thing that your professional identity would have judged you 5 years ago for. Sometimes the most strategic move is the one that looks unrelated from the outside. But when you really map it, you alchemize it, you validate your capacity, you embody a new rhythm, you navigate by nourishing you, it makes perfect sense to you. That's exactly what I call the maven part of me. I map out the mayhem by telling the truth about what clinical hours actually cost me. I alchemize the pattern by refusing the old story that more safety had to come from more clients or more work hours. I validated my capacity by admitting that I am not an endless emotional resource. I embodied a new rhythm by building something physical and creative alongside the depth of work that I actually do. And now I am navigating by what is nourishing me, not just what looks respectable on paper. There's a different life on purpose. And if you are a helper listening to this and you're quietly fantasizing about one thing that you love to build if your profession wasn't allowed to shame you for it, I want you to hear me clearly. That desire does not automatically mean that you're less committed. It may mean that your wisdom is getting louder. It may mean that some part of you already knows the future cannot be built on survival math. So maybe the question is not, what should I do that looks most professional? Maybe the better question actually is, what would nourish my future self enough that I don't need to have to keep funding my whole life with depletion? Maybe it's one less client. Maybe it's one less shift. Maybe it's that creative project. Maybe it's that business nobody saw coming. Maybe it's giving yourself permission to become more than the one thing before burnout actually makes you make this decision. I'm building this life on purpose, and I hope this gives you the permission that you need to think about what you might build on purpose too. So I want you to tell me in the comments, if you could trade 5 draining work hours, I would say, then what's the one thing that actually feeds you? And then what's the one thing you would actually be doing? I'd love to hear. All right, my loves, that's another episode in the books, and I'm out. Now, I need you to go drink some water, touch some grass, get a sip of sunlight, take a pause, and stop acting like your nervous system is optional. And yes, you are basically a houseplant with complicated emotions. If you needed this today, tell me about it, tell me what landed, hit follow, and send this to the I'm fine friend who is absolutely not fine, and you know who I'm talking about. And if you want to work with me, everything you need is linked in the show notes because Auntie doesn't do energy sucking DMs. Okay, love you. Bye.